Martin, and I am going to introduce you to the Blair Ranch. This is the main cabin here at Blair Gowrie, which is one of two parts of the Blair Ranch. It was lived in by Victoria Blair, who lived here from about 1921 through her death in 1946. It was her mostly full-time home, and here she ran a self-sustaining landscaping business in her greenhouse, which is no longer here on the property, but she did this by herself while her husband lived in Sterling, Colorado, running his cattle ranch.
The realm of Victoria was the grand nickname affectionately given to the land and its buildings by the family of the enterprising woman who lived there, Victoria Blair. Under her watchful eye, this property, nestled in the northern portion of Jefferson County Open Spaces Alderfer Three Sisters Park in Evergreen, became a comfortable mountain residence in this rugged realm. More commonly called Blair Ranch, it's the story of a capable woman who established a home and business in the challenging foothills of Jefferson County. Born in Alabama in 1877, Victoria Selma Powell was the daughter of businessman William J. Powell and his wife Selma. She grew up in Sterling, Colorado. After attending the University of South Dakota for a year, she returned to Sterling in 1895 to marry the principal of her alma mater, Frank H. Blair. As newlyweds, Frank continued as principal at the high school, but costs associated with having a family forced him to reevaluate. They had two sons, William and Harrison. In 1897, Frank decided to leave the field of education and went into livestock ranching with Victoria's father. This was the beginning of the Blairs' successful run in the business world. The Blairs were very successful in business, adding several properties and a hardware store. Of these endeavors, one property stood out among these new acquisitions, a ranch in the mountains of Evergreen, Colorado. Evergreen seemed to be the solution to a problem. Victoria, who was said to have developed health issues ranging from arthritis to hay fever, had a difficult time living in Sterling. A retreat in Evergreen was the answer to easing her ailments. So, in 1919 and 1921, Frank and Victoria purchased parcels of land that had previously been homesteaded to create a mountain estate that is today known as Blair Ranch. Frank's ranching and hardware businesses required him to stay in Sterling, so their mountain property became Victoria's getaway. At first, she stayed there seasonally, but eventually it became her mostly full-time residence. After Victoria arrived, she made herself at home in the property's dwellings. The main house was located in the southern section of the property and was later the portion labeled Blair Gowrie, inspired by the name of a town in Scotland. The core of the house, made of hewn logs, was believed to have been the original homestead cabin from about 1889. Additions were made to the cabin throughout the 1940s, providing a pleasant space for Victoria to dwell. Surrounding outbuildings were constructed including a bunkhouse, horse barn, and garage, all built in or around 1923. As Victoria continued to make the mountain property her home, the number of buildings in Blair Gowrie increased with the construction of a bunkhouse used by her son William about 1935 and a shower house constructed between 1940 and 1950. The Blairs also established another dwelling group to the north of Blair Gowrie and named it Blair Atoll. To accompany that area's existing circa 1915 log and stone cabin that predated Frank and Victoria's purchase, the family built a log slab cabin in 1919, a water collecting tank in 1932, and a privy in 1940. Victoria also used Blair Atoll's cabin as a retreat. Additionally, roads, bridges, and a dam were constructed, and telephone lines and electricity were run to the property. With these expansions, Victoria's rugged realm was established. The realm was not just a residence, though. It was also a bustling ranch, buzzing with activity. Unlike their properties on the eastern plains, the Blairs did not raise a large herd of cattle on their mountain ranch. Instead, they envisioned their Evergreen property to be a self-sustaining landscape gardening business that Victoria established and run, according to her grandson's unpublished manuscript, A Brief Personal History of Victoria. To accommodate this, a steam-heated greenhouse and several bedded flower boxes and beds were built on the land in 1932. Referred to as the Winding Trails Nursery in her 1946 obituary, the landscape business was said to have been operated for about 15 years under Victoria. Unfortunately, a fire in the late 1940s or 1950s destroyed the greenhouse, effectively ceasing operations of the landscaping gardening business. Later on, Victoria's life was much quieter. The weeks were filled with her ordinary routines, calling or writing Frank or their sons, visiting friends, having the chauffeur drive her and her maid Lydia to Denver to stop at the bank or buy meat at the market. On occasion, Victoria took the train to Sterling for a weekend to see Frank, who by that time was involved in local and state politics. With her family established and their careers and personal lives in line, Victoria's remaining years were spent living in Evergreen until she passed away in 1946. A few years after Victoria's death, William rented out the houses at Blair Ranch and Blair Atoll with the idea that vacationers could enjoy the realm of Victoria as the family had. Brochures were even created and printed, but this venture only lasted from about 1948 through 1949. In later years, William's wife Isabel used the cabin at Blair Atoll, where she continued the tradition of escaping to the mountains for decades. When William passed away in 1986, the property remained with Isabel until her death in 2000. At that time, the property transferred to William Blair's children, William Powell Blair and Mary Louise Blair Arnold. After over 8 decades in the Blair family's possession, Jefferson County Open Space purchased Blair Ranch in 2002 and made the land part of Alderfer Three Sisters Park. Although it's been years since she lived there, Victoria's impact remains in the existing buildings of Glengowie and Blair Atoll. They are reminders of the independent woman who carved a comfortable niche in Jefferson County's rugged realm of Victoria.